Hey, I'm JD. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Please hit like. And we're going to do a continuation of this repivoting of a balance staff. So here's the balance staff itself. As you can see, I've drilled a couple of holes in the end of the staff. There's one there. I believe they're adequately deep to give the staff some strength. And there's a hole from the other side of the staff. Not an easy job drilling holes in the end of a very small balance staff. So I'm using blued steel here. So what I did was I chucked up a piece of blued steel, and I need to measure this blued steel to see what I'm looking at from a removal perspective. I can measure it and then determine how close I'm going to get to finalizing the staff. So what I want to do is cut this back to enable it to fit into to here, and then I have to cut this away, leaving me a very small piece of metal that will become the pivot. So I'm using a gauge called a deuxième gauge. This is what the gauge looks like on one end, and this goes up like that as you're using the gauge, and on the other end you have a caliper or the pinchers for the gauge like this, and it just exaggerates the actual measuring distance. And so the first thing I want to do is measure the drill bit that I use to make this hole, and I've pre-measured it, and it just squeeze this drill bit underneath the within this gauge, and it's very difficult to do this way, but I've done it before, and it's 3 there, and the distance is 0.3 millimeters. So the hole here is 0.3 millimeters. And what we have for the wire itself right now is a distance, or a diameter. Let me measure this and have a look at the other end here. And it is 5. So this is a 5 millimeter piece of wire. And that's 5 down the other end here. And I need to take off 2 millimeters at least to get it inside the hole. So that's going to be the trick. Now I have to adjust my tip over tool rest so it allows me to access this with my graver. Got to get this right. Just going to move this out of the way a bit. Pull it up a bit like that, and then try to make sure your tip over tool rest is kind of parallel with the piece. And then when you put the graver here, you can see it's sliding way too high here, so I got to lower that, and I should also get in closer so it prevents chatter. And chatters when your graver kind of bumps around. So that's way too high. Lower this a little bit, move this a little bit away from the chuck so I don't have this the chance of the chuck making contact with it. So I think that's probably still too high. Oh no, that's not bad right there. I think I'd have to move this back just a bit because it's not completely getting the graver. So I want to make sure that the graver is workable, and I think that is probably not too bad. I think I want to lower it just a tad. Not easy. It's very touchy stuff. Touchy. There we go. That's a little bit better. I'm approaching it at a better angle that way. And then just make sure that everything is leveled off now. And I can tighten the tool rest on the bottom. I'm going tightening it on the bottom. Now I have to make sure that my cutting surface is good. And I've got my part. I want to keep that part out of the way. So this is the part here. I want to keep that out of the way. I'm just going to put this part on a mat over on the side so I can actually have to physically go over there and grab it so that doesn't end up on my hands. And I can start cutting away material, and I want to cut it all the way back. And even though my pivot is only going to be a very small portion of this, I want to cut it back probably to about this level here. So let's just see whether I'm getting good cutting here. It is cutting, but I probably could sharpen it. I'm starting with this carbide graver to start out with, but I do have better, smaller gravers for later on when I get close to being the right size. And I'll just keep cutting and measuring. Now I can't afford too much of a taper here because this thing has got to go all the way into that hole, but I can't afford it to be loose either. Otherwise I've got the other problem where it won't stay in place, right? So it's almost got to be absolutely the perfect cut. So what I do is I work it down to the right size first, to get it close to the right size, and then I'll use the other gravers for the fine tuning. So, and I think I got a little bit of magnetism on this thing as well. And we're still up at 5 here. We really haven't moved the marker that much. I do have a diamond plate that I use. This is a 300 grit diamond, and I can take this diamond plate here with my graver and actually very carefully sharpen the graver. I usually put this into a jig of some sort, but I can do it by hand as well. And I just can rub it against the diamond plate until I see particles coming off. So I'll just show you really quickly. And then I got to pull it away and do it. So I can rub it like that, and then check the base of that plate to see where the material is coming off. If I check the base of this thing, I can see where the material is coming off, and then keep working it. So I'll do that to make sure I've got a nice sharp graver. So now that graver is a whole lot sharper, I can get in here and start working the material. Now I highly recommend a tip over tool rest. If you don't have a tip over tool rest, you don't have the control to flip it out of the way when you want to. So. I think I'm going to grab my Graver Sharpening device so I get consistency to the flat on this graver. It's taking off material right now, but I just don't like that it's not taking it off levelly to a level or parallel degree. Yeah, so let's just do a better job sharpening that graver. Alright, here's my Graver Sharpening device right here. And I just have this peg in here just for safety reasons, I guess. So it's got a roller on the bottom, like that, so it can roll nicely along this plate here. And then you take this out and put the graver in. So let me grab the graver. These are my gravers and my handle. And just take that out like this. Get rid of the graver grip, and I want to loosen this like that. Now this has got all kinds of measurements here on the side for degrees and stuff, but they're of no use. So you'd have to be sharpening the same gravers each time. So you're better off just putting the graver into the sharpener or to this device here and trying to line it up. You know, you line it up first like this, like that, and then you know that that angle is absolutely wrong, right? Because you can see down here that the nose is way up, so you want to probably pull this graver in more like that, and then just turn this a bit until you get the right angle. So I'm just going to play with this for a second until I get the right angle. I want to get close to this with my eyeball so I can make sure that it is relatively flat, and once I have it relatively flat, like that. I'll pick this up with the plate and look at it at an angle to see if I've got it flat. So that's not too bad right there. It's going to hit most of the, it's going to be pretty good there, I think. So, and this angle is perfect right there. There's no problem there. And the beautiful thing behind this little device here, as you can see, is that where you put the graver in, there's kind of a little triangle in that bit, so it ensures that that graver is sitting there nicely. See that? That is really good. So whoever invented this little graver did a wonderful job. So I'm starting off with a 3000 plate here, so I could probably take a bit of angle off of that, just a bit, right? Just a little tiny bit. Tighten that up, and then have another look at it sideways. And you want to look at it sideways to make sure it's generally flat. In this case, if the roller is flat and the device is flat, then you're pretty good. So that's not too bad. It's going to correct a past problem as well, right? Because I was doing this by hand for a while, and you want to make sure that every now and then you don't do it by hand. So make sure that's tight as heck, and then start rolling it. And the trick here is to look at the material coming off the tip. And if you see little grains of material coming off on the front part, then you've grinded it down to the right level. And I can see it coming off on the left-hand side, but I want it to come off on the right-hand side. So the left-hand side will shave down until it levels off with the right-hand side. And then I've got myself a perfectly done graver here. So I can see the tip on the right-hand side. Now material's coming off. So the left-hand side was good. Now the tip on the right-hand side is coming off. And look down again. And yeah, I can see it removing material. The last check will be the bottom to make sure I've actually got the bottom right, or correct, as they say. Let me have a look again. That's very close. Take off a little bit more material. Just get some. These plates are available on AliExpress, and they're very cheap. And they're very good. I get 2500 grit and 2000 grit. I'll show you the grains I'm looking at after I get it down to what the level I want it. I think that's pretty good right there. So let me show you what I'm looking at from a particles perspective, and you can understand what I'm saying here. So let me look at the particles here, and you see the particles on both ends of that little roof, and that's what you want. So that means the graver is sharpened. I should probably, and if you look at the base of this thing, just see if I can get a close up here, the base, there it is there, and you can see that it's perfectly flat now, so that's very well sharpened, so that's really good. So what I want to do actually is grab another one of my gravers and do the exact same thing with that, so that I'm prepped to actually do the job properly. So I'm grabbing the second triangular graver I have, and I've got some other ones here that are very narrow that I might want to do that with too. And so this part 2 might have a lot to do with graver sharpening and a little less to do with so I'm looking at how much is sticking out here, and I still have to adjust this after. Some people like to take the graver as well and then scrape it backwards just a bit after they've done it. It's not really necessary, but so I take the next graver and put that in as well, like that, and if I'm lucky I've got the same angle. See how lucky I am here. And I look down on that and say, is that pretty much the same angle? Tighten that a little bit and then have a look at it. You got to look at it from the side here, because you got to look underneath. And the tip is way up way too high. So that's That's not good. I need to have that like more like this, and then look at that again, and I can see a gap in there. See a slight gap, which means that can go down even more, right? So I just take this like this, loosen it just a bit like that, and then just turn it up a bit, turn the nose up a bit more, and let me see if I've got everything. Seems to be good there. I want to make sure my angle is right too. It's just slightly off from where it needs to be here. There we go. I saw the rotational angle being slightly off, so you know what, that tip can go down even more, just slightly, and it can rotate this way even more. So if I rotate it like this just a bit more, is that going to solve my problem? Let me have a look. It's all in the setup. So now I know the nose can go down just a bit more here. And the reason you're doing it this way is so you can basically not waste a lot of material when you're removing the material from this thing. You don't want to waste a lot of material because they're not cheap. Gravers are not cheap. That's not too bad right there. I think I'll try it at this level here, make sure everything is tight like that, and then I'm going to start scraping it like I did the last one, putting a little pressure, and then looking at where the particles are collecting. Now you can wash these plates in water. Use warm water or hot water to wash the plates off, because it does wear the diamond material off just a bit, but you need to go a little bit more on the right hand side, which means you're taking more material off on the left. Oh yeah, that's good there. That's perfect. So if I show you what I got now, this is the material. See how it's providing those little grains on the end, which means it's flat, right? And once again, I can turn this around, have a look at the base of this. See if I can zoom in here at all. Come on, zoom in for me. And if you look at the base, you can see the base is nice and shiny and it's flat. So that's 2 gravers done. So that's perfect. And then the other gravers that I want to do are these really small ones. So these gravers are, I've got 2 flat, 2 round, 4 flat, and 4 round. So I want to do 4 flat is what I want to have done for this job. And that's 4 millimeters across and flat. These are Valarobe. You can see the name there, Valarobe. There we go, Vallurbe, Valarobe gravers, and they come up like this, and they're like this. And the base, these things on the end, this is 4 millimeters along the tip, along the end, right? So I'll have to show you in the other camera. So if I look in the other camera there, if you see that the tip there, the high end, this would be the end that hits the thing here, and then the other end here, this here is the end I'm using. So that would be 2 millimeters, right where my fingernail is. Or sorry, 4 millimeters. So I want to make sure this is sharp as well, and sharpen that up. Now for these gravers here, it's almost impossible to use this device. And the reason why is when it grabs it at this angle here, it kind of tilts it sideways like this, so it makes it impossible to use it. And if I were to grab it by the round shaft, right, which is where I'd want to be grabbing it, so loosen it way up like that and then grab it by this shaft here, I end up with too much of an angle here that I can't resolve. So my angle here is way too high, So the tip is way up on this, and I'd have to be cutting it way back, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is put it into a different device. So I want to put this little steel peg in here just to allow myself to have this in a good condition like that. That's a great graver sharpener, by the way, for normal gravers, but these Valero gravers are micro gravers. So I'm going to use this sharpener here, which is totally different, right? It's kind of a freewheel thing like that, so you can get kind of any angle on that. And I'm going to want to put the graver in on the top here, right? And again, I'm trying to eyeball the angle here to make sure I get it right, because I'm going to be squeezing the graver on the top, right? Which is super difficult to make sure it's done properly, right? So it's like kind of like that. Kind of screwed that up here, but I want to put it in an angle like this. You just loosen this up just a bit. I'm just fumbling around here a bit. I apologize, or apologize. I put it in like that. Get it a little bit tight, not a lot, but a little bit tight, like that. And then I want to put it down like this to make sure I get the right angle on the graver, right? So that obviously is too steep an angle, so I'll end up looking at it sideways and then loosening this up and then lifting it until I kind of got the right angle here. And that is nose up too high on that. So the nose up, as you can see, I've got the nose up way too high. Let me see if I can show you that nose. There we go. See how that nose is up way too high? You don't want that, so it has to go lower. So I have to actually pull this up a bit until I get it so it's relatively flat, like that. And because these are carbide gravers, you really can't compress that a lot. It'll snap it. And if I look at it now, geez, the nose is up too high, just a little bit too high again. So I just need to lower it even more. Let's see if this does it. Nope, too high. Lower it even more. And I'm keeping an eye on it from the top to make sure it's not kind of screwed up. And have a look at it here. That is almost perfect right there. So that's my level right there. Now if I want to, I could mark the graver with a black marker to make sure that if I were to put this back in, it would stay like that. So now I can take this graver here and start removing material from it like that. So I'm going to continue removing material from this until I can see the filings show up at the tip, right? And then once I've done that, I pretty well have it sharp enough. So that's enough for graver sharpening, and then we'll get back to cutting this in a few seconds. So just like the other one, I'm looking for grains on the end there to make sure that I've got a sharp, the tip is sharp on this. So I'm looking for grains, and I've got a few grains showing up, which might be good enough. Now they say in graver sharpening the final test is the fingernail test, but this thing is so sharp it won't even go along the fingernail. It just digs right in like a good pair of NHL skates. So I don't have to worry about that for the fingernail test. And the other gravers I think were extremely sharp as well, so I don't think that the fingernail test is going to serve me at all today. It's just because these are super sharp. So anyway, but they're sticking in nicely, so that's good. So that's it for graver sharpening. So now that I have the graver sharpened, I can start removing material from the part. So I want to bring it down probably to 3.5 millimeters. I'm looking at it right now, and it absolutely is not flat. So this is really going to help. Now the other thing I'll end up doing when I get closer to the end product here is I could probably use my stone here to take off the material kind of in an even way, but I got to get it down a bit more. And it's coming off nicely now. It's all about getting the right angle. It's all about getting the right angle of the graver against the material, right, to make sure that it's in it's good. So measure this again. You just put the finger down like that and just look at the deuxième gauge, and it's getting close to 4 right now. And I had to go down to 3, so I got a little ways to go here. So we're just going to keep working on this until I get it down to the lower level. So another note here is as you get this thing smaller, it becomes weaker, so you really can't press hard against the part. So you really have to be aware and have very sharp gravers so you're not pressing hard against the part as you're trying to remove material. So now I'm at 4, which is good. See if I can get down to 4.5 and remove even more material. I can probably speed this up in the video so you don't have to agonizingly watch me remove material from a part. And you hold your graver at a bit of an angle here when you're peeling off material, and you go forward with the graver. Alright, so that's pretty good there. And let me look at this again and see what level diameter I have. Yeah, the tip is just under 4 right now, so I could remove even more material. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip to my other graver. And this other graver is going to provide me a little more precision. And I'm also going to flip to my other glasses I'm wearing. So I'm wearing my very famous airy loop right now, and I want to go to a ×20 loop so I can make sure I'm really paying attention to how much material I'm removing. And the airy loop, this the ×20 loop, let me just grab this stuff here to show you. The airy loop, looks like this. That's this one here that I use. It's a I think it's a ×5 loop with a ×3 on the lens on the bottom on the glasses. And this one here is ×20. I just got this from AliExpress. It's really cheap. It comes with a little light that I don't use. I never work it, but it's ×20, so you can really get close with this, and it's cheap as heck. Now I switched this and I switched to graver, and I noticed when I look down at this particular graver that it's not flat on the end, which is not good. It's the way I sharpened it. So, but let's see if it removes material for me anyway. Yeah, it does. It's very sharp. Now when I get down to a certain level, I can start doing part fitting. And so I just take the actual part that I'm going to put on here, and I was going to put the back one on first, and just take this balance staff here and then look at whether if I'm close to a fit yet. And nope, I've got a ways to go. So, and that's where, again, I know my hole is 0.3 millimeters. So if I take my Deuxième gauge again and measure the tip here and look down at the end, I'm kind of 4.5 right now. So it needs to go down a bit more, and it might be stone worthy soon. So I'll just take this down a bit. And you got to kind of hold your graver so if it goes underneath the part, it doesn't snap the part off. Let it go under if it wants to travel under, and very loosely. Now I'm going to measure the tip again, and I just hopefully sped that up in my video so you didn't have to get bored. And if I look at that tip, I'm getting really close to 3 on the tip. So let me take a look at the part here and see how far the part is to getting inside there. It's pretty darn close. So now I'm going to bring out the stone, and we're going to work it with the stone a bit. So I've got 2 stones here. I can't remember which one is the Arkansas stone. Maybe it's this one here is the Arkansas stone, and I have this stone as well. So I just don't remember what these things are called, but they're stones and they remove material, so they're pretty good for that. You put a little bit of oil on there before you use it, and then you just hold a stone in your hand kind of like this, and you rub it back and forth to remove material. So you got to watch it because you can remove material pretty fast on a very small part. Alright, so I just need to put a bit, I can put cutting oil on here actually, which might work, but I'm going to try it without oil right now. Start off with just to see how much material I'm removing. This stone doesn't need as much oil as the other stone did. It's kind of a safe way of getting the pivot down to size. So when you're working the pivot end, I use stones pretty much. I use a 0.2 millimeter graver plus the stones when I'm working the pivot side. And you got to hold this very lightly so you don't remove too much material too fast. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can put a little bit of cutting oil on that. Will that remove the material a bit faster? And it's the magic cutting oil. So there's a blob of cutting oil. It's way too much probably. And I just rub that on the stone a bit and then rub it on my pants. This stuff is gold, Jerry. Now the only problem with the cutting oil is I've got to basically measure, see how the part is doing. I get an area here where there's no oil. I want to see how much material I've removed from this, so I'm going to get the part out again and fit it. I just have to clean the part and everything anyway later on, so I'm not too concerned. To make sure I got the right side of the part here. And we're getting really close right now. The part's actually going into the hole right now. And I just have to make sure that I've got a good distance in the hole. So it's going in the hole right now. So I'm just a little concerned about taking too much off at the moment for a good fit. I think that the tip is a little bit smaller than the other side. So I'm trying to avoid polishing the tip so I can get the pivot in nicely. And once it's too small, you're screwed. You got to start over again. So you can't, there's no such thing as making the diameter bigger. Let me see, I'm going to try it on this side here. Oh yeah, that's all the way in there. That one there is going all the way in. So you can see, like that. So I may actually want to nip the tip off of this thing because it's just too much, I think, or too small. This one's not too bad, but I think I want to take the tip off this thing because I've taken way too much material off. So I want to cut that tip away. So because the end part just got a bit too big, so I can do that just by filing it down like this. Let's take the end and do this. And use the wide part to do that. So I just want to remove material from that tip. I can also use a diamond plate to do that, or a file, or anything. I just want to look at the diameter of this thing after I've finished removing material from it. Because I want this pivot to be snug in place. And right now it's too loose on one side. Which might imply that I have to start all over again, but I'm not sure. So hang on a sec here. I had to chamfer the edge there a little. Now I grab this part again and see what that looks like. Is that still too small or what? Man, that is so close to being good. See there, I can, that's pretty good there, because I can turn that to screw that on, which means it's going to be tight in place. But I want to pull it off right now. So that's actually pretty darn good. I'm going to remove a little bit more material from the end, which gives me more gripping material further in, right? So just a bit more here. That should be good, and I'm going to chamfer it just a bit. Like that. And that, my friends, should do it. Let me grab that. And remembering, I'm only replacing the staff, the pivot on the end of this balance. So that's pretty good right there. That'll give me a good tip to work off of. So now I can actually compress that on and then cut it away, but I want to clean this off with alcohol. I want all this stuff to be cleaned off. So I need to clean the balance off, dip it in alcohol, let it dry off, clean the pivot off, all that stuff. So I make sure it stays on nicely, right? And I'll also want to put a little bit of Loctite on the end of that after I'm done. So let's just clean this balance off, and I'll be right back. So to clean the balance off, I'm going to use Zippo lighter fluid, and try not to smoke. And I'm going to fill up my unit from my dunker tank, because it's big enough to accept the balance. And I've got a bit of a pad on the bottom of this thing, which will protect the balance, the end of the balance, from getting too messed up or whatever. So I take that, and I'll just grab a pair of tweezers here, and I'll lower the balance into this. And I want this to get nicely soaked, because that's going to clean it up nicely. And I also want to take a brush and make sure the brush, I'm using the brush in here. So I need a little bit more lighter fluid in here, because it's not dousing the top part, and this is what I want. I want the hole to have the lighter fluid in it, so I just need to pour this up to the drowning of the pivot hole. There we go. So that's in there nicely. Lighter fluid evaporates incredibly fast, so you don't really have to worry about that. And then I want to just take a nice soft paintbrush like that, and I just want to dab the lighter fluid into the hole with the paintbrush. So just doing this here, and this you don't need to do much here. And while I'm at it, I might as well just clean the balance. I'm hoping that the marker, I put some markers on the edge of the balance for where the stud is for the hairspring. I'm hoping that this does not remove my red marker. I can still see it right there, so I'm just going to not rub that area. So there we go. So that's that. And I'm also, because I put cutting fluid onto the part, I'm also going to take this brush and just wipe off that part on the, let me just leave that in for a few seconds. I'm going to take my lighter fluid, and I'm going to go way over here like the friendly giant, and I'm going to put the lighter fluid on here as well, just to get rid of any leftover oils that might have been on here, and that'll work well, no problem at all. And then I'll let that dry off. That's not going to take much time to dry off, and we'll take this out of the we'll take this part out of here like that, and we're just going to let this dry off as well. So I'm going to put this on a piece of Rodico to make sure that the tip doesn't get hurt. And now I'm going to drink this. No, actually I'm not, I'm just kidding. I'm going to take this lighter fluid, and I'm going to dispose of it accordingly. All I do actually is throw that on the pavement, the paving stones out in the front yard, and that evaporates within a minute. All of this will evaporate within a minute. So don't breathe that in. It's not a good idea. But I'm just keeping myself away from it right now. And then we'll start fitting that part. So while I have this little container of lighter fluid out, I might as well throw the hairspring in there, because that is a good thing for a hairspring. I'll just leave that in there for a while, and if there's any gum on that hairspring, it'll loosen up, and then I'll use a blower to agitate that. Now, to dry off the part, this part here, you just need to have a blower, and you just need to start doing this. If you look at the table here, and look how fast the lighter fluid evaporates. It evaporates within minutes or seconds. That little piece of, just chase that around, and it is evaporated. It leaves no residue either, which is really nice. So I can start working, blowing on this with this. If I'm really lazy, right, I can use dust off. Which also gets the lighter fluid into that, away from that hole. And this dust off stuff dries this stuff so quickly. And that's just compressed air. And if I look at this again, do I still have that red mark? Yes, I do. There's a red mark right there. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm a little paranoid about losing that red mark, I'm going to mark it again, just to make sure I don't lose that position, because that's where the stud was. So I've re-red marked it. There we go. So that's good. And I'm going to use the dust off up here, and although this is likely already dry, so that's good there. So that's pretty much done. Now, just to let you know what I'm thinking here, okay, I've got to put this part on here and then screw it on tight, right? So make sure that's on tight. I don't want to have to cut this away while I've got the balance on there. That could be awkward as heck to do that. So what I'd rather do is cut away a bit of this part first, leaving me a very small bit to grab onto with the chuck. And then after I put this on, I can turn that around and be able to cut that off, no problem, while chucking that up on the other side. So that, I think, is the preferred way of doing it. So I could thin it out a lot right here beforehand, and then screw that on, and then I'd be able to part it without a big problem. So that's another way I could do it. I'm trying to think through this here. So I've decided to put this on and then cut it away. So what I'm going to do is put in a little tiny bit of Loctite on this, and I'm going to put it in the whole side, right? And then I'm going to push that on. And so I just need the world's smallest drop of Loctite on there. Anything bigger than the smallest drop could become a problem. And this is the medium Loctite. Now I think I got to go to lunch today, and someone phoned me and scared the living crap out of me. So let me just, a little bit of Loctite on the end there. You don't need much. Like that. And then I'm going to just screw this on. My Loctite was locking in really tight, so a little joke there. So then I'm going to just put this on like this, and I'm sorry you really can't see me doing this. I'll just try to move my fingers this way so they're out of the way. And I'm going to get this on like this, and then I'm going to rotate it just a bit while I push inward. that is, I think, about as tight as it gets. There we go. That's not too bad. I can leave that the way it is, and now I want to cut that away. So this is the tricky part. You put the lid onto my Loctite here, and I've got to cut this away. Now to cut this away, I decided to use a graver. I've all kinds of things. I've got all these different files. I've got loads of different types of files. I've got really small saws, cutting saws. I just think the smartest thing to do here would be to use a graver to cut this away. Anything else is just probably not smart. So I don't want to do something that's not smart. So we're going to use a graver. I may go to a smaller one than this, but I'm going to start off with this. I've got the tip over tool rest, 1,000 miles away from the part, which is usually dangerous, but I'm not too concerned. I just want to make sure that this thing doesn't fly off. I'm going to put my close-up glasses on here because I'm getting really close to this thing parting off. And I may flip to a different graver here just to get the point in there. So I've got this graver here, and I can flip to this to get the point into that part. Okay. Sorry about the length of this video, but takes a long time to repivot a balance. So just letting you know. I had somebody call me the other day because they have platform balances, and every time they have a pivot problem, they call me up and say, "Hey, JD, can you repivot this platform?" I hate repivoting platform balances because it's not mine. So it's not something I'm working on. That's why. So just to let you know. So here we go. I'm going to just work on this a bit here. It's so close to getting I could probably just move this. I could probably just bend this and it'll break off now. Let's try that out because I'm very close here to the edge. So let's see if I can. There we go. And that's it. And there's the tip that needs to be worked on. Let me clean that off with some Rodico. And there it is there. There is the final post for the pivot. So I'm going to stop right now. So that's secured in there. I'm a little bit anal retentive, so I'll end up chucking this up and letting it dry overnight before I make the second one. So the second one is the same process exactly, and I'll just use the same piece of material that I already have in here. So this is it. That's the sort of intermediate part 2, I'll say, of doing it. So now I've got to do the exact same thing on the other side and chuck that up and then get that ready for making that second pivot. So there you go. So thanks a lot. Thanks for watching this video, and this is an interesting way of actually replacing a pivot on a balance. So I still have to shape that final pivot into what it needs to be for the balance. So thanks again. Thanks for watching my channel. Please subscribe, please hit like, and please keep watching my videos.